My next step is to add the collar and taper pin to the shaft. I'm going to go to my File Explorer and I'm going to drag and drop the collar into the assembly. I'm going to add a concentric mate between the ID and the OD of the shaft. And then I'm going to carefully grab this edge on my shaft, rotate around, hold Control, grab this face, and I'll make them coincident. Go back to the previous view. The next thing I want to do when I rotate the shaft, the collar needs to rotate with it. The pin in the real world will force that to happen. Here, I want to add the mate first. So I'm going to mate a plane in my collar to a mate in my shaft, and then they'll rotate together. So if I choose the top plane in my collar, hold Control and choose the top plane in the screw, I'll add the coincidence mate. Now when I turn one, they both turn. The next step is to add the taper pin, fully define it, and then I'll cut the holes into the parts to suit it. So I'll span the toolbox. I want to be in the inch toolbox. I want to go into pins, all pins, and then I want a tapered pin. So I'm going to drag and drop the tapered pin here into free air. And then I'll set up the size. And the size I want is the 5/0 tapered pin. Its length will be important because the length has to go through the collar and into the shaft. So for now, I'm going to set its length to 1 inch. And I'll accept that. I'll push escape because I only wish to add one. And now I want to check because I don't remember what the OD of this part was. So I'll go to my Evaluate tab, Measure, and I'll check. And I can see that's 7/8. So this pin's actually too long. 7/8 would be the maximum length of the pin I want. So I'll close this, right click on the pin and say Edit Toolbox Component. I'll come back over here and I'll choose the 3/4 pin. That will be plenty long enough. I should add a description so that it shows up in my bill of materials, but I'll accept this for now. And now I want to mate this tapered pin into my collar and shaft. So what I want to do is look at the planes that come with this. In this case, it'll be easiest to mate the planes of the pin to the planes of the collar. So if I choose this plane here in my pin, then I go back to my collar and I want to look for a plane I could mate that to. I could mate it to the front plane. So I'll do that. I'll add a coincidence mate here and this will jump around. So now I need to stop this type of movement. So once again, I'll go back and I'll look at my planes. Well, if I choose this plane in my pin and I look for equivalent plane in the collar. So found it, and I'm going to add another coincidence mate. Now, once again, I want to see how does that pin behave. And I can't see it. So what can I do? Well, I can do a couple of things. I'm going to change the transparency of this part, and there's my pin. And now it's just moving through the shaft. So one of the last things I want to do is I want to mate the edge or the face of this to the outside of this collar. Change the transparency again. I'm going to select this face, hold Control, select this face, and I'll add a tangent mate. So now my pin is fully mated. Right? It moves with the shaft, but it's also buried inside the collar. I'm going to minimize this tree here. Make my shaft transparent, and I can see the pin goes completely through the shaft. I'll shut the transparency off. What I want to do is I want to edit this. So I'm going to select the shaft and I'm going to say Edit Part. From the drop-down menus, I'm going to say Insert, Molds, Cavity. And wherever that pin interferes with the shaft, it will put a hole. So from my featured tree, I'm going to choose the taper pin. I'm going to say OK. The warning is telling me the external reference will be broken. That's a good thing. I'll say okay. It breaks the reference. I'm going to stop editing this, and if I open my shaft up, I can see my hole I just created. Here's my cavity. The X's tell me the references are broken, and that's fine. I'll Control Tab back to my assembly, and I want to do something similar in the assembly to my collar. So I'm going to select the collar. I'm going to edit the part, and once again I'm going to say Insert, Mold, Cavity, and I'm going to tell it where the taper pin interferes to remove the material, and I'll say OK. I'll accept the warning again, and I'll stop editing the part. And SOLIDWORKS might do the same thing to you. As we can see, oh my goodness, that collar looks messed up. The problem is the pin doesn't go all the way through the part. So what are we going to do? Well, first off, I'm going to decide not to use the cavity. So I'll go back and I'm going to edit this collar again. I'm going to open it up here and I'm going to delete the cavity. When I delete this, it'll also get rid of the sketch used to create it. I'll say OK, and the cavity's gone. I'm still editing the part, but this time I'm going to use a different tool. I want a plane in the middle of my collar, so I'm going to see what planes are available. And my front plane is in the middle. So in that middle plane, I'm going to create a sketch. And in the next video, I'll explain how to get the hole through this part.